Not Board of Education. Not Board of Education. Cobb County celebration. Helping kids no hesitation. Not Board of Education.
All right. Hello. Welcome back to Not Board of Education, the show where we break down what's happening in Cobb schools so families and voters aren't left in the dark.
I'm Laura Judge.
And I'm Andrew Cole. We're going to get right into it, go over all the exciting news and updates from the November board meeting because there is a lot to unpack.
Yes. And Andrew, I'm sure you like the title of this show, The Dogs, Dollars, and Disappearing Accountability. All that alliteration we have.
Yes, I wish none of that was an issue. All of them are, but at the very least, we can have some fun with words.
Yes, and we're going to start immediately with what a lot of the community talked about at the board meeting, the elephant in the room, the board, or rather the chair's response to the ethics issue involving Mr. Cristadoro, the board member representing Post 5, which is the East Cobb area of Walton, Wheeler, and Pope High Schools.
Which is up for election next year, lest we forget.
No, not Post 5. Post 5 is not until 2028.
You said Post 5.
Post 4 is
Here I go.
next year.
I was about to read the statement from the chair whose post is up for election. That's what I was referencing. I apologize for the overlap there. So David Chastain, the current chair, decided to add, because, and I'm going to zoom out just a little bit before I go into it, there are very limited ways to get anything on the agenda right now. I know we've talked about this on previous episodes, but just so people get a refresher, you can be the board chair, you can ask for the board chair to add something, or you can get a majority of the board members to approve you adding an item or a topic for discussion or vote onto the agenda. If you are a board member, just a humble, regular board member, that year, you don't really have any other avenues to get things in front of the community at a board meeting. You could do it other ways, but that's the only way to really kind of get something on the floor, so to speak. And the chair did that because of the news that came out about the Post 5 board member, John Cristadoro, and the ramifications of his personal/professional financial dealings, shall we say. I know we've talked about it in the past, but
a civil case where his client paid him $250,000 and it did not go to the service that they were paying for. It instead went to personal accounting, and he had to be sued for it.
Yes, and admitted fault. And as far as everything in documents go, has agreed to make the client whole. And so that ball's rolling. I don't know many more details than that, but the issue that many people were wanting to hear from the board about was, okay, what does this really say or represent about our current leadership and the judgment at play? Certainly when the post member in question is part of the board majority that, as we know, tends to steamroll things based on political partisanship. Not always, which I'm happy to say as we get later on in the episode, there are times where we all come together, which is good. But typically, unfortunately, things can be pretty partisan. And the statement from the chair was really no different. Yeah, I'll stop there. I'm going to read some blurbs from the statement, and then we can dig in. So I'm not going to read it verbatim. If you're really wanting to nerd out, you could watch the recording online. But the statement begins with, I'm paraphrasing here, I'm going to talk about this matter, which the board has recently received questions on, yada, yada, yada. The statement that I'm about to make is the only time we're going to address this as a board. Pause. We'll talk about this in a moment. He was very comfortable solely representing the entire will, view, and wishes of the complete Board of Education without talking to the other members of the Board of Education.
Yes, and I did a public comment at the board meeting, and I had explained that since this is a personnel issue, those issues come up during executive session, during board meetings, and if it hadn't been discussed with other board members, then that statement couldn't come from the board as a whole, because it didn't take everyone's input into account, because that was not it had come out in between board meetings, and there wasn't an executive session that happened where he could talk to other board members so that the board as a whole could make a statement. And that was really disappointing for me to see as a constituent of the school district.
I believe it. And you saw too, Saylor and Davis and Hutchins all at various points tried to jump in or clarify. You just said this represents the views on behalf of the whole board, and it doesn't. Could we comment? Could we add? And they were very quick to steer things. So that was his opening was, here's how we all feel. I didn't tell anyone, but here's how we all feel. And then he's talking about how he got questions from the community, what they can expect, what the community can expect from the board members. And then he goes on to talk about the fact that a board of education is elected representatives from the community. Just really, really novel points here, and how they're real people, which no one ever said that they're not real people. What we wanted to know was, do you have real standards, or do they stop at a party
Accountability.
line? And as we've seen, clearly there are standards. There are double standards. And that's what's really at play here. Each of us are regular people. Collectively, we keep Cobb the best place to educate and raise children in the state of Georgia. Everyone I know on any side, at any aspect, like wherever they fall on the political spectrum, I think everyone is proud of our schools and our county. And this keeps coming up where people act as if you can't have both. And if you want good schools, then you need to not change a thing that's currently in place at the board or with district leaders. And I think our schools and teachers are going to be great, period, because they're great. Now, if they could get even more support and interaction from district leadership, would they be even better?
And that's been a big ongoing problem. You know, both you and I experienced it as candidates, just hearing from people. The biggest problem with this school district is not our schools, not our teachers. It is the leadership on the board. Things that are happening within the schools, whether it's discipline or curriculum being taught, or even, God forbid, books that are in our schools, that is based on the leadership in the school district. And it comes from the top. That includes our elected leaders as well as our district leaders, like the superintendent and his executive staff. And that is what needs to be fixed in our school district. We still have great SAT scores. We still have, you know, gifted programs and magnet programs and, you know, academies within our schools. None of that's changing based on, you know, who the leadership is. It's that our board has been running along without barriers, and civil rights are being taken into account. You know, this financial irresponsibility is now happening, and just everyday people are not being heard, and that's not how a school district should run. But apparently that's part of our liberal agenda, if you want to
There
say
you
that.
go with all of your activist goals. Yeah, I will never understand why asking for some parent and teacher committees and more board interaction at community town halls is like Marxism, for whatever reason.
Because people would have to be held accountable for their actions,
Well, actually,
unfortunately.
you know, that really is it. And it's a distraction. And it's, you know, they throw out these powerful culture war buzzwords to be alarmist instead of, like you just said, because we're seeing it with this statement and with something inappropriate happening. Okay, I mean, y'all, come on, let's not make a big deal about this. And as we'll talk about in a few minutes, they make big deals about other things. So, yeah, again, standards and double standards. The next part is particularly remarkable. When boards of education stay focused on classrooms, success for students follows. When boards get involved in decisions best made in living rooms, doctors' offices, courthouses, or ballot boxes, students suffer. And that when I heard that being said in real time, I gasped a little bit, scoffed, a little bit of both. And I was really surprised because I like that. That statement is perfect. I agree with it. The issue.
It's a democratic value.
Yeah, but like
Shh,
Yeah,
don't
sorry.
tell the libertarian on the board.
Yeah, well, so, and this is part of it, because right before he said that, he said, no board member has the authority or ability to make any decision or affect one student or $1, kind of on their own, is what he's getting at there. And that might be true, but when you are the fourth vote on a board of 7 who routinely falls on 4-3 votes based on partisanship, you kind of are this sole board member. It's kind of like the Joe Manchin structure of, depending on how things are built,
Mhm.
if there's one person that can move over and change a large outcome, that is a lot of power. And does that person have a strong performance record, either in public service, professional operations, community service, whatever? And this particular board member ran on business acumen and a desire and a commitment to be an independent thinker, operator, and someone who would cross the aisle, so to speak. I will forever think it's ridiculous that we have an aisle for our school board, but
Yeah. For
yes, yeah,
schools. But what bothers me about that one too is, and a lot of people have not been aware. Our teachers are aware because I was asked by our Educators Association at one of my endorsement interviews, is that the Chamber of Commerce has a lot of pull over our schools because our school board is running the business of the schools, whether it's contracts, just a whole bunch of different business things, construction, cementing, lumber. And so when you have someone, again, voting in a block whose whole campaign was supported by large figures within our Chamber of Commerce, it really becomes who's holding this person accountable. Is it the Cobb Chamber? You hear a lot of people having an agenda based on who donates to a campaign. When you have, again, the former president of the Cobb Chamber of Commerce, running your campaign or being that main point of contact originally, is he beholden to the Cobb Chamber? Is he going to give those contracts without really parsing out who's the best person for a contract? And all that comes into question when you have this fiduciary irresponsibility as well.
Yes, amid a board that has a history of documented issues with vendor selection and propriety there, as far as transparency and securing the proper number of bids and reviewing everything in a kind of on the up and up way. Yeah, my goal forever will be to have things be more interactive and transparent, where the community is just getting explanations at all. Here again, we got a bunch of, hey, don't look behind the curtain, don't even worry about it. We didn't get explanations. And he goes on to say, the Board of Education will continue its unbroken practice and limit itself to actions occurring within a board member's term of office and his or her elected service. This Board of Education does not exceed the authority we've been given by exploring the personal lives of our board members in the same way we do not involve ourselves in the personal lives of our students, staff, and parents. And that one was particularly noteworthy to me because of how it ended.
So full transparency.
Yeah.
I was in the board meeting when he gave the statement. And normally I sit fairly quiet. I do have friends that are a bit more animated within board meetings, but I normally sit quiet and listen to get everything in. And when he said that he does not involve himself in the personal lives of staff, my first thing was, and granted, the whole room laughed
You could hear
at
it.
that
You could hear it.
because
Yeah.
just at the last board meeting, teachers were fired based on things that they put on their personal Facebook pages. And I was just like, how can you say that when literally just a month ago, you publicly fired or forced to resign 3 educators because of something that they did in their personal lives? Again, like you said at the top of the show, there are standards, double standards. And when it does not fit their agenda, they're going to get rid of those people. And it's unfortunate.
Yeah. And if you take that line out of this context where it doesn't align with their behavior, it's a wonderful idea and sentiment and a goal to live by and operate with. Don't exceed the authority you've been given by exploring the personal lives of board members, students, staff, and parents. Yes, please. Great. Love it. You don't do it. And just like you said, the dust hasn't even settled from another time where you did it very deliberately and also very deliberately publicly. Whenever there's a chance to kind of hitch their car to a train that's already in motion for the sake of like a national discussion or some sort of culture war issue, man, oh man, they somehow find reasons to do it. Oh, yep, we actually do need to be a part of this. And here's why. And they do it like with 1 degree of separation. They don't say, here's how we feel about XYZ. They'll go and find an issue to act on to be a part of that discussion. And that's all done in an effort to kind of stir up attention, especially if it's an election year, to drive home the fact that like this is a partisan board. This is a district that is being governed and steered by a partisan group. And if you like what you see, stick with us. And after stuff like this, though, I mean, I have seen and heard from people who did vote for more of the same, who are going, this is really a bit much is an understatement, but that's what they said. And I agree with them. It is a bit much.
Yeah, and with what happened last month with the teachers getting fired, something that the superintendent had said was that he was reminding the community that this issue is not political, but moral. And so for me, when you have a moral question, and of course our superintendent likes to put everything into good and evil buckets. When someone takes $250,000 from a client and does not apply it to the service that they were supposed to provide, I would like to ask the superintendent and our board chair and even Mr. Cristadoro, what bucket do you think that falls into? I mean, again, I myself am a small business owner, and I've never taken a client's money, not even a small amount, and not given them a service for it. It's just not something that I do. And morally, I think that that's wrong. And if they want to draw that line, then they need to have that line for everybody.
That really is it. You nailed it there. If you are going to draw a line, you need to have that line for everyone so that there's some sort of stability and consistency with all of this. And my preference is hold everyone to that standard, make something even more public, delineated, like figure out something to define what's acceptable and what's not, and talk about it. And if you think that this is acceptable, talk about it. What the chair did not do, what no one did at the last meeting, was actually address, hey, yeah, this stuff happened, but here's why it's okay. They just said, come on. That's an invasion of, don't even worry about it. And also, this is the only time we'll be talking about it. So don't even bring it up again. Everything's fine.
Yeah.
Go back home. Nothing to see here.
And a lot of it was like, it was before he was elected, which is fine. I get that too, if that was even in part of the explanation. But it was when he started his campaign. And then also the actual case did not happen until he was in his seat. And immediately it became a issue of, oh, this is a political attack on me. And it wasn't, because again, it couldn't have been a political attack on you because it happened before you became a candidate or during the beginning of your candidacy. So again, if it was a political attack, I was his political opponent, then I would have used it in attack pieces when I was running against him. He's now elected. He's in that seat for 4 years, and people are upset. Constituents are upset. I had stayed out of it for a long time because I'm not his political opponent anymore. I'm his constituent now. I should be also allowed to voice my opinions about it, but I'm not attacking him politically. Again, that's part of the thing that comes with being a public figure, is people are going to go through a lot of what you would consider private moments. And you just kind of have to learn how to roll with the punches on that and say that you're wrong and say that you're sorry.
Yes. Yeah. I do think it goes with the territory there. And if you're opting into that, you should expect it. And maybe even, I would say, with something that could be as pertinent as this, get ahead of it. Go ahead and talk about it. Don't hide from it. And you want to talk about, what's the phrase, actions occurring within a board member's term of office. Well, if you're petitioning to have ongoing decisions sealed and hidden from the public while you're in term, that's an action occurring during a term of office. I mean, it's still ongoing. Was the actual transgression this year? No, but the fallout's still happening. And I think, as we've all seen with different people at all levels, it's how you handle things that could really say a lot about a person when things are going well and when things aren't. And if the way we handle things is to hide from it or kind of distract from it or dismiss it, I think that should be highlighted. And that's also a cause for concern. That's not model behavior. And I think people are understandably and justifiably concerned even more because of what happened and also how everyone on that side has behaved since it came to light.
And since we're talking about how it gets handled or how it gets addressed, Mr. Cristadoro did put a statement out. Did you want to go through that?
Yes, yeah. To my knowledge, this is one of the few times it's been acknowledged. And there's one other section where, was it the AJC, where they asked him about it? And he said, oh, these are people are only talking about it because it's a partisan attack, yada, yada, yada. That was one of them. And the second one is this. I previously owned a small business that, like many others, struggled and ultimately failed during the challenges of COVID. I cooperated fully with clients, partners, and the court to resolve all matters responsibly. And I don't doubt that at all. And I think we've seen that. They're working about the issues being addressed. I'm grateful for the lessons learned. It reminded me of what matters most: family, community, responsibility. And I'm not going to deny that those are things he cares about. He goes on to say that he understands how it's important to provide every child with the opportunity to learn and succeed. It remains a focus. It's a privilege and a responsibility to serve. I think that's all well and good. Is there any
I didn't hear an apology.
I was going to say, is there any remorse? Is there any lesson learned? Do we want to turn this into a teaching opportunity for every 100,000 students?
So that's my thing. As a role model, as a board member, I feel like, everything's a teaching moment. That's how I've taught my children. I'm not saying that I am without mistakes. I've made plenty of them, but I've always tried to look at my kids and those children that are in my sphere and say, okay, how can we make this better? I was wrong doing this. But, and I said this the last show, COVID keeps getting blamed. The COVID pandemic was in 2020. And a lot of businesses saw issues between 2020 and 2021. This lawsuit happened 2023. So it's really hard for me to blame something on COVID. And I joked about it in the last show that by 2023, COVID was in the rearview mirror for us in Georgia. And again, if a business is having struggles, you're upfront and honest with your clients, or you don't take the clients on. If you don't have the means to give them the services that they need to do, that goes into budgeting a lot of things. And again, that goes into a lot of what our board does. Granted, our finance department has been really good with budgeting, but you should be able to look at our district's budget as a board member as well and understand where all this money is going to. For you to know that you're struggling and having business failures in your business because of COVID, that still doesn't excuse taking, again, $250,000 from a client. I cannot wrap my head around that. Maybe I'm wrong. Am I can you wrap your head around that, Andrew?
I want you to stop using your authority to invade the private lives of others, Laura. It's something that could be explained. That's what I'm really after. Not just for this, but for anything that the board does. Just fess up. Be transparent. Talk about what happened and what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's grateful for the lessons learned. Everyone has their reasons. Everyone believes that it comes down to good and evil. Okay. Great. Actually talk about what's on the table and why everyone should be okay with this, or why you did what you did with any of these decisions. The other point that he goes on to make is they reviewed the law, and people were asking what legal steps could be taken, if any, based on the action. And because the action occurred in the part of life over here and not as a board action, there is really nothing to be done legally. And that's okay. I understand that. Can we talk about what kind of message this is sending to treat it and manage it like this instead of actually talking about what happened and why it's still okay? Because I think we all know if someone on the other side, or one point I've been making is like, if one of those pesky commissioners had something like this come out, I think there's a certain group in town that would have their pitchforks in the Merida Square. And here it's like, hey, listen, let's let sleeping dogs lie. And it's just,
I mean, the biggest thing that it calls me back to is Stacey Abrams and her financial issues, and just hearing all of those things from the Republican side. And I mean, again, it still goes into, and maybe, there's a lot of jokes online that Democrats are not in a cult. When someone has financial issues, we're going to ask for accountability,
easy for you to say.
regardless if a person's a Democrat or a Republican or independent or libertarian. And I keep mentioning libertarian because a lot of people don't know our board chair originally was a libertarian until he ran for our school board and then started identifying as a Republican. So little interesting tidbit for anyone that has not been watching our school board as long as me or Andrew have. And yes, it's become quite an obsession.
Yes, yeah, I know, and I got a few more points on the discussion and the topic, or the distraction from the topic that all went down. Was it just last week? Was it 4 months ago? I don't know what time is anymore, but yeah. So we've talked about the general idea here, the details, the statements, the fact that things weren't really addressed, and obviously, I think everyone expects and understands that like some sort of representative, positive, responsible, ethical behavior goes a long way when you're voting on how billions of dollars are going to be allocated. You've got a general like 1.8-ish. That's every annual, or every the district's annual budget, and then there's another almost billion that come from SPLOST funds that get decided on and voted on and allocated from the board as well.
And a SPLOST vote is coming up next year.
That is right. And then on top of this, with the legal thing, he's kind of getting at, and I skipped over this earlier, but he's always, he went on to say, and we get challenges from time to time about we need to take action against another board member, but this always comes from the minority and the implication there is like, they're just upset that they're not in charge. So, okay, sure. Are their points completely justified? In this case, yes, we should be looking into things. And so she asked for that, or he even mentions at one point in the meeting, Board Member Saylor attempted to initiate an ethics hearing, and that got squelched. And okay, no surprise that you stopped that. Justify it. Why don't we need to look into things? Why don't we need to slam on the brakes and do a full audit to provide additional transparency and peace of mind to our community, given this information that's come to light? People are worried. Help assuage their concerns. Show your hand, and then people will be calmer. They'll feel better. That's not hard.
And that's something that a lot of people don't know is that, so our Cobb Commission does have an ethics board, so that everyday people, if they have an ethics complaint about one of our commissioners, they could send a complaint to the ethics board. There's also a state ethics committee for state level things, as well as campaign finance ethics. The school board is in charge of their own ethics accountability. So really it comes down to the board majority, again, deciding whether or not they're going to hold one of the
Themselves.
4 majority members accountable. And you'll never see progress if everyone's like, no, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. And we'll see next year about how the leadership vote goes as well, because it looks like the 4 majority members are just trying to sweep this under the rug and get through the next election by re-electing the chair to his position. And it's really, really hard because I have heard from Republican friends that rather make phone calls or talk within their own circles rather than, make public statements on Facebook or come to school board meetings. Some have that this is going to be a problem for our chair, David Chastain, come his election in 2026.
Yeah, I mean, he really clearly like quintupled down on the fact that this is acceptable behavior. I'm okay with it. We're not looking into it. Also, you, entire community of almost 1 billion people, drop it. Don't worry about it. We're good.
Mhm.
That's just not true.
He could have almost went into what the superintendent said about our buses and said an investigation was going to take place, and then just leave it at that and let the investigation go on forever until people quote unquote forgot about it.
Oh, yeah. I said 1 billion a second ago. I meant 1 million. I don't think we could fit 1 billion people in Cobb. Maybe one day. But so that is the board chair's statement on the matter that I don't think is concluded or over or should be out of the public eye. I would like to see them, it's never too late. I'd like to see them do more at some point in the future and clarify why it's okay.
Well, yeah. And I mean, and that's where we're at with the accountability in this situation is basically on the people in the community to keep this at the forefront of the board's mind, as well as, making folks understand that this is not a one-off situation. I know we talked about it a little bit. A concerned constituent came to me about Mr. Cristadoro's business practices as I've been with previously watching the funds. Right now, I just can see comments on their page. A former business partner of Mr. Cristadoro is speaking up and out about, his financial dealings. And this was the same business partner that he had, I believe, up until probably 2024, right before the election. And there are many alliance businesses that people can go through that all started and fizzled or got a PPP loan. And this is information from a concerned constituent. And it just concerns me as a constituent myself of where is all that money moving to? And now that, granted, as a board member, you're one of 7, but who are you beholden to make sure that they are getting those contracts?
Yeah.
They are getting, their proposals to the top of the line.
Yeah, I agree.
It becomes very problematic for me when you have questionable business practices as well as people that you've been in business with.
Yeah. And I don't know any of those.
Again, I feel sorry for our voters that, they were not exposed to all of this. Those voters that believed, again, he was the best choice, that is their prerogative, but they also need to hold him accountable as all voters should to anyone who's representing him.
Yes. Yeah. And I grew up, a lie by omission is still a lie. And if people could have been operating on more information, all the better. Same thing as before. I still don't think it's ever too late. Provide more information. Explain why all of this news, all these rumblings are nothing to be worried about. Tell people what happened and it's over. The truth will set you free. I just think it is that simple. I could go on for 3 more hours about it because I do think it's a very interesting case, but I'm going to shut up and pivot to the next segment, which is on the update for the approval of additional vaporwake dogs.
Yes. So we talked about this quite a while ago, a few months back. The vaporwake canine dogs, those are dogs that can smell unspent ammunition and firearms. They're a little bit different than our police dogs because of that scent stuff. And they cost quite a bit more. And we need to also train an officer to be able to handle that dog because it's one dog, one officer. I believe we had 8 and it came up for a vote for, was it 8 additional?
8 more, yeah.
Because we're trying to get one in each high school. So that would put us at 16. It was a bipartisan vote to go ahead and approve that. But again, we had Board Member Saylor trying to ask for more questions about, or more answers about what has been proven that these dogs can do? Have they been able to root out and show to be more safe? Which I think she had good questions. I think it's
They
important.
were. How were those received? What happened in the meeting there?
We can talk about it in executive session,
Yeah.
but we're not going to talk about safety and security in front of everybody.
Yes. And
That's pretty much, she gets dismissed often when she has questions about, proven methods. Why should we be able to spend this much? But even if she wanted to talk in executive session, they voted before they went into executive session to approve those dollars.
yeah. Yeah, well, and that's a thing too for any listening at home who hasn't heard about how things are typically done. By the time it comes to a vote at a board meeting, usually what's going to happen has already been literally scripted and coordinated in a back room over the week leading up to the meeting, so that the vote itself is almost a performance instead of an actual vote with actual discussion happening before it. And you saw too last week how if you ask to delay something to review information, have more time, that usually gets kicked as well. Not allowed. We're doing it. We're moving forward. Let's go. Because they've already scheduled it. They've already designed it. I would be very surprised if they hadn't already ordered training or reservations for the additional units that were approved, because it takes time if you were to wait for the vote and then go ahead and purchase more canines or purchase more trucks or cars for the district, something like that. Often I think they've already got things moving behind the scenes.
The interesting thing with these additional dogs is that the first set, and our legislators had asked about it too, came from the monies that our governor put aside for safety and security. So again, when they question our superintendent about where is this money coming from, what pot, because that's a whole big thing that people need to know. Money can come from certain places. He was able to use the money that the Governor Kemp put aside for safety and security, so there didn't need to be a vote. There needed to be a vote now because it's coming out of the school board budget. And again, normally there's 2 meetings within one day, technically 3. You have your working session, your executive session, where it's not for the public, and then the voting session. They voted on using this money before it went into executive session, before it even made it to the voting session. So even if Board Member Saylor had asked the questions about training details and the student impact and how students with disabilities and learning differences are interacting with these dogs, those discussions couldn't come up because they had already approved it. So at that point, her questions kind of almost become moot, unless they discuss it in an executive session and they came out in the voting session and said, okay, now I feel comfortable, even though I can't change my vote. And that didn't happen. Again, she has reservations, as I believe many people do. We do want to keep our kids safe, but we don't want to spend money all willy-nilly.
Yes, yeah. I think the questions and the concerns were valid and not any sort of gotcha. How are we training? Do we have any recorded interactions? Do we have any additional programs that the canines or the guiding officers that are going to be coming out of our annual budget now moving forward go through to provide additional peace of mind to the community? And I don't think that's any sort of harsh trickery. I think those are all just very reasonable questions. And if you can't answer them, that's an issue. And if your kind of escape hatch is always, it's safety, we're not gonna discuss that in public. Okay, I don't want to know. I don't want the book that was used for training. I just want to know that there's additional, maybe even data-backed, that phrase, methods that are being used to train officers.
Even when they manipulate the data themselves. We've seen that this past week. I know if you look at my Facebook page, I talk about
the chart,
their charts and graphs. But yeah, you could put the data out there showing that these dogs are doing better, but the weapons detection system and everything else. But when we're dealing with the safety of our kids, I feel like our district likes to pull on our heartstrings to spend more money in places that we're not going to question about. And that becomes a bit of a problem for me because I feel like we should do our due diligence to, get the correct answers.
That, and you just really touched on something there, because how many other, and I don't know how many firms provide similar services, and I am open to different methods of providing creating safe learning environments. I don't think the school safety issues aren't caused by one issue alone, and so I don't think there's one perfect solution to just make everything safe all of a sudden. I think it's going to be an amalgamation of different programs, supplies, methods. And if you're going down a certain path, why? And if you've identified a good vendor or a good solution, did you compare it to anything else? Do you have any data on getting quotes from different firms? Or was this a one and done and you didn't even need a vote anyway, so you didn't have to submit or get a RFP or anything? And so did we get railroaded on price? I don't know. We haven't been really provided much. It's just everything's so black box and you don't need to worry about it, which makes me worried about it.
And that's how a lot of our contracts come in sometimes, especially with new technology or new services, is that, it comes in through a loophole. I wouldn't even call the $50 million that we got from Governor Kemp a loophole, but we were allowed to use that on safety and security. The superintendent decided to use those funds on safety and security, thankfully, and that was on these dogs. But now we realize, because, God forbid, it happened, firearm was bought into a school where a dog was not present. So now we want a dog in every high school, and now we're getting the board to vote on these dogs when the board has not had the time to do the due diligence, and other board members won't even discuss with the community or anything else about what the data looks like. We were told other schools have used this before or other companies have used this before. Bring that to the board members. Anything that can really, really help. It's just not being done, and it's very concerning, again, as a constituent, that, it's come in through this way of, hey, we had safety and security budget. Oh, now we need more. We're going to dip into our school board budget now, and we need the board members to vote on it. And again, this was a bipartisan vote, which is a little disappointing, not because, I would like bipartisan support for the safety of our kids, but I would also like the due diligence of knowing who this company is, at least, all members who voted for this having a full grasp on what the company Vaporwake does, and can they answer the questions that board member Saylor asked.
Yeah. Show me how it's worked.
And everyone who's voted for this.
Yeah. It's okay to want safety. It's also okay to want some data supporting the decision to spend multiple millions of dollars that are going to be recurring costs every year for the future period. So I think it's reasonable. I had two semi-related recommendations I wanted to mention, just because I stumbled upon them recently online. On HBO, there's a new documentary called Thoughts and Prayers. It is about the school safety industrial complex and the billion-dollar business that it's become. And it's all of these different add-ons that go around, and this, I don't mean it this simply, but like hawk their wares to schools and school districts. And so some of this could be desks that flip up and have some sort of bulletproof or resistant element in them. Same thing with the glass that's getting used in windows or doors at schools. Some of it's very reasonable.
Yeah.
Ideally, I would rather have a situation nationwide where this wasn't a concern the way it is for us.
Yeah.
And
like bulletproof backpacks and stuff.
that kind of thing. But we've got a unique situation here in the USA. And so I get why the businesses have developed, but the documentary in particular focuses on this one firm that uses Hollywood level makeup in combination with they use a school, I guess, on a weekend day, and they do a full drill, a full not reenactment, but role play, whole building, hundreds of volunteers and participants and go through an active shooter drill with makeup, timing, commands. Everyone's got a nearby coordinator that's telling people what to do, just to see kind of how it would all unfold and which safety or training methods kind of prove helpful. And I understand the value in training and drills and things like that, but just with everything, there's got to be a yes and approach instead of an either or approach with school safety, and only landing on, okay, well, what do we do once it starts is not enough. Okay, yes, there need to be something to do. If something's going down, you need to act in certain ways, proven ways, effective ways. Can we also address other proven measures that are lower cost and do that as well? Improving counselor-student ratios.
Like
Yes,
counselors.
exactly. And recommending, I know,
Look at that,
yeah,
great minds. Thanks a
and
lot.
I know we don't like telling people what to do, but if something's been proven over and over to work, and small barriers like, I don't know, people putting their guns in a safe, even if it's quick access, has been statistically shown to stop and or slow acts of violence so that people can be intercepted. I don't think anyone would feel that it's the government coming down on them hard to say, hey, this has worked in other communities. I think it would go a long way. You know, it can't hurt. And I can't remember the stat off the top of my head, but I think just far and away, the number one way a weapon ends up in school is because the student had access to it with someone just 1 degree of separation from them, a parent, a relative, or a friend.
Yeah, it's like over 75%.
Yeah.
You know, both you and I have been with Moms Demand Action. We were also endorsed and also gun sense candidates by Mom Demand Action in every town for gun safety. I myself am a gun owner. I'm also prior military, so I have fired firearms. My husband's from the South, so his cousins have a hunting club, so I've been out deer hunting with them. And my child both my husband and my son have been Boy Scouts, so they've done some shooting as well. Guns are not foreign to us. And that's been a misconception with Moms Demand members and people endorsed by Moms Demand. A lot of us have owned firearms or been around firearms. I talk about all the time, you know, my firearm is locked up. My kids don't have access to it. But at the same time, I know that kids are very inquisitive. They're going to look for where my firearm is at in the house. You know, kids push buttons. I remember when they finally were aware that we owned a firearm, they're like, but mommy, you're part of Moms Demand Action. And I, again, told them it's a common misconception that, you know, some of us don't own firearms or some of us haven't been part of, you know, our military or police force. And that's just not true. From what I've seen from firearm owners is they like to be responsible.
Yeah.
It's the irresponsible people that need those guardrails to say, and I brought this up to the school board about letting parents in the community know we're in the South to go ahead and just make sure that we are locking up our firearms.
Yeah, and the second one is from last year. It's a little older, but it's called The Truth versus Alex Jones, and that's on HBO as well. And that is, you just figured of Mom's Demand. I had to watch it in installments because I was getting very affected by the content. The focus on all of the lies that he started and perpetuated and profited from, and the case that ensued, and the restitution that was
And this is in regards
approved.
to Sandy Hook, right?
Yes, yeah, the Sandy Hook shooting in 2012, and just everything those families went through. It's one thing to go through such a tragic ordeal, period, and then to have a whole section of society tell you you're lying. And I know other children and families have gone through it as a part of other school shootings where it's like, oh, you're a false flag operation. Oh, you're faking it. I mean, you could just clearly see the suffering that everyone went through. And it's just, it's so sad, and it was hard to watch too. Being a parent, it's
Mhm.
it's something though that I think is also because of the frequency, unfortunately, with which news like that comes out. There isn't a palpable shock anymore.
Mhm.
And because of that, there's not even an immediate call for action sometimes, or
Yeah.
it's almost like a new threshold. This is horrible that this is even a feature of our culture, but there's a threshold where if it doesn't cross a certain number,
Mhm.
it's not even really breaking news or a headline event.
And I mean, even on a small scale, we've seen it within the district of, when the shooting happened on the McEachern campus. Our district was quick to say it wasn't a student that got shot. And we find out later that the person who did the shooting was a student. It's just all those qualifiers, even when there was a shooting at one of the middle school football games, our middle school football teams, contract with the school to have that space, and they wanted to say that it wasn't a school shooting. And going back to what we talked about in the first part of, this Charlie Kirk situation happened on a campus, our superintendent was very quick to call that a school shooting. And I don't deny that it was, because it happened on a campus. But, when our middle school students are playing a football game and a shooting happens on our campus, that would also be considered, to me, a school shooting, because it happened on our school property. Same thing with McEachern, even though it was in the parking lot and it's an open campus. That is
Mhm.
a school shooting. Again, having that line and sticking to it, not just when it fits your narrative. And
Yes.
you see that a lot, unfortunately, with the district. Well, thank you for those two documentaries. I will be sure. I've been hearing about the Thoughts and Prayers, but I did not hear about The Truth versus Alex Jones. I will try to check them out. If you have HBO, I would recommend anybody else check that out. Protect your mental health, because these are heavy, heavy pieces, especially when we're talking about
Yeah.
the safety of our students. But let's shift into the transportation updates, because that was a big deal at the school board meeting as well. I
Yes.
feel like I almost saw a grown man, fleet maintenance worker, cry during public comment because of things that our superintendent said during the working session. So what you
I
got
think
there?
that yeah, I think that was the case, and I don't blame anyone when you are being publicly chastised and made an example of because you had the audacity to speak up because you were so concerned about working conditions and employee treatment and the resulting productivity from that department that creates and provides and maintains our buses, which keep our kids safe. I mean, the dominoes are all right there, and one
Mhm.
is right next to the other. And there's an interesting statement made after a proposal for bus upgrades, and they lightly reviewed some of the audit findings and repair data. And a lot of the fixes for the buses, for anything that was identified that needed a repair, so we heard, were small, quick fixes, which is great, wonderful. And so they're able to pull them out of use, put them right back on the road after they've had could be something small but very important, like a light bulb in a headlight, something like
Mhm.
that. It's a quick fix, but it's a big deal if it's out. And so they found that stuff, they fixed it. I think that's very straightforward, and the right thing to do is great. Then they also went on to expound upon some of the findings and mentioned that 12% of the buses went out of service recently.
And I think someone talked about how many students that is when you have 12% of our buses out of service. I can't remember the exact number, but it wasn't a small amount. I feel like it was something like 3,000 students maybe, but I can't remember. I know we're in a district of 106,000 students, but when you have 12% of buses out of service, it can be concerning of getting our kids to school,
Yeah, well, that affects.
especially without, doubling up
Yeah,
bus runs and everything.
exactly. And there's already so much put on the buses themselves and our bus maintenance crew and our bus drivers. One of my sisters is a bus driver, and I've heard stories from her about the good, the bad, and the ugly, what it's like to do that. And I don't take any involvement for anyone in any role that's a part of our district lightly. I know there's a lot that goes to it, but when you're operating something like that and issues do happen, there's a lot of responsibility there. And I think we obviously want everyone driving the most thoroughly, properly maintained vehicle they can. And that's a never ending process. We've got old buses, some of them are 20 years old. And if they need repairs, that's just going to keep happening. Someone who starts to notice trends or easier, more effective top level fixes, who goes and says, hey, I've got some ideas, and they get denied. We'll talk about it later. Don't worry about it. You're good. Hey, we need help. We're overworked. We're short. We're coming up short staffed some days, so we're working extra hours. We're being paid and doing overtime, but we're tired. And I'm afraid that mistakes are going to get made. We don't have the materials we need. Our working environment is not always safe or properly maintained. We got people with warehouses and sections of the warehouses and repair facilities that don't have air conditioning. And so if it's August in Georgia, that's not a fun place or even a safe place. I mean, you're venturing on OSHA level concerns and issues, depending.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it firsthand, but this is what's been
I mean,
taught.
I don't know how OSHA works with this federal administration, so
Sure.
that's a whole nother concern. But I think that what bothered me is if anyone missed the board meeting, the superintendent, in so many words, had said that lies were being spread. Our buses are not unsafe. Right? Is that what I'm?
Yeah.
Right.
The students are safe. The buses are safe.
I had some double negatives in there. I don't like to have double negatives. Basically, our buses are safe, and that what's being reported out or being said in public comment is untrue. This is why we had maintenance workers come back to a board meeting again to say that they are people of integrity. I feel like the superintendent was playing semantics because they said their conditions that they're working in is unsafe, and that can lead to mistakes. And so I feel like there was a lot of splitting hairs there, and really they're not getting the needs that they have met. Also, something that came up during that public comment was that none of the board members had been to see any of those facilities. And it wasn't until there was a comment made on Board Member Saylor's Facebook page and she answered saying that they are not allowed to go to the facilities while there's an investigation ongoing. So not only are we being told that there's an investigation into all of this, is that our board members who are in charge of this, who can make changes, can't even go to see these facilities because our district leaders have decided, well, now we're in investigation, so you can't even go see those facilities. You can't talk to the people there without going through, my next door neighbor who's in charge of bus transportation.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, you'd think they'd see each other occasionally and just figure out a plan. The other piece of that is the we're going on 8 months. And these issues are obviously still ongoing because the team keeps showing up. And I hate that they even have to. This seems like such a simple thing, but I think one thing that's actually at play and is the real issue is that they shouldn't have spoken up publicly. This is the kind of thing you do with the chain of command. And if things haven't gone well, you need to just shut up and wait your turn. And maybe we'll help you, maybe you won't, but you better not do this in public. And that was kind of alluded to in the statement as well about people are cherry picking these stats to try and make a statement, to cause alarm, to act like students aren't safe. And that's simply not true. Well, okay.
And I think that many public figures, as well as a certain podcast, mentioned this when they originally spoke up, was that we were fearful of this retaliation happening. And, I spoke to some of the maintenance workers that left earlier and, just asking what we can do as public figures, activists even, because we're not going to shake that label. And, it's just, again, still speaking up and saying that they need help. They're understaffed, they're overworked, and they don't want to make a mistake. And that is reasonable when you're talking about our children are on these buses.
Yeah, yeah, and things go. They fix what they can while they can with what they have. This is a
Mm-hmm.
horribly structured sentence, but they can only do the best they can with the tools they're given. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that I cannot shake, I mentioned this in one of my posts a couple of days ago, is that we have repair mechanics that are making their own kind of lifts and supports and kind of improvising their own materials and
Mm-hmm.
tools to be able to reach into buses and to complete repairs. And this is something that, if you are in a facility like this with heavy machinery and volatile chemicals and electrical components, like, you should be working with rated, produced, certified, NSF level materials and tools, and that are not free, but you're protecting your staff. They feel heard and cared for. Like, everything connects and is better if you just fix
Mm-hmm.
these small, realistic asks. One of the things that really stands out is the need for like a higher level creeper where you're kind of on a stretcher and it's also lifted because buses are so high, so that you can really get in and work under the hood of a bus and not have to contort yourself and get tired and fatigued, because it's hard to get in there and complete some of those
Mm-hmm.
repairs. And I just, very reasonable request to me. If we've got money for all these other things, I think throwing a couple $100,000 their way to satisfy some basic requests would really go a long way. Why aren't we doing that? Is it because we resent them for speaking up?
Well, I mean, again, doesn't fit that agenda, unfortunately. Something else that some of the maintenance workers have mentioned is that, we have different types of buses. One of the good things that came out of the meeting is
Yeah, yeah.
that 30 more buses were approved with AC. That's been an ongoing issue. The whole fleet should be replaced. I think it was a 15-year thing to replace the whole fleet of buses. So we got 30 more buses, but so we have buses without AC, we have buses with AC, we got small buses, long buses, needing different things. And when they talk about the equipment that they need to fix the buses, it's to fix all of the buses, even those that are about to be sunsetted. While they're still in use, they still need those supplies, as well as those new buses that we're getting. They need those materials to fix those buses, and they're not seeing it. And it's important for them to have the equipment to fix the buses so that kids can get to school on time. We're not shoving 4 more kids in a seat. We're not doubling up bus routes. We have a working fleet of buses, and our bus drivers are not overworked. I feel like that's fairly simple.
Yeah, everyone wins. And I think you brought up a really great point, which is you provide some better tools and systems for this department, and literally every single bus, every single route benefits because of it. The ROI is very, very high when you make just a few improvements. So yeah, I think that's a great point.
Well, so I actually just spoke about a win with those new buses. We had another mini quiet win that was bipartisan. I want to highlight it.
Yeah,
Do
do
you
it.
want to talk about it first, Andrew?
Well, I was happy that it happened, because I've been in the room before where a board member has asked for language changes or explanations or additions to a certain request or proposal, and it just gets shot down right away, seemingly, depending on your political allegiance. And this time that was not the case, and I would hope that we could treat requests as objectively as possible. And it seemed like that actually happened this time, where Board Member Saylor, who's asked for additions or changes to language with the legislative priorities vote in the past, actually had them heard, reviewed, and approved this time around. So that was really nice. Calling those out, the topics involved school meals, counselors, student ratios, and federal funding for IDEA and ESEA.
Yeah, and those are super important. Counselors I've talked about before to our board. I believe the state of Georgia is at like 1 to 400, while the recommendation is 1 to 250. Cobb County Schools is less than that 1 to 400, thankfully, but we would like to see it get down to that 1 to 250. So that was added as a priority. School meals, I've talked about that on this show, not to our school board members, but legislative or Representative Amani Barnes, that's been a big priority to her to make sure that all kids are fed, especially since we were in a shutdown. Thankfully, it's over right now, but just making sure our kids are fed, because we do see that, issue snowball with learning and everything else, behavioral issues. So making sure our kids are fed is super duper important. And then the funding for our IDEA and ESEA, earlier this week, and this is the week before Thanksgiving, depending on when you listen to the show. We're recording the Friday before, or it is Friday before Thanksgiving break. So we get to have our kids for a week, and congratulations, teachers. Please take your break away from our children. But we just saw our Department of Education at a federal level get fully gutted and things getting moved to other departments. And it causes a lot of uncertainty into what our kids have. And so I think it's really important to have those legislative priorities for our state to start thinking about, and for those priorities to come from the most local level where we're impacted at. I think that's really, really important. And I'm glad that everyone saw that these 3 things that Board Member Saylor wanted to add is important for all kids, and everyone got on board.
Yes. Yeah. It was really nice to see. And there have been some articles run about, whoa, hey, they added them. And at 7-0, but they normally, yell at her and don't let her
They
get
normally
anything on. And so that was really nice to see. And similar to other requests, just completely undeniable points and requests. And so it was nice to see reasonable things be heard, reviewed, and agreed upon. That was really, really nice. And Cobb is, I wouldn't even say winning above its weight. I think we just carry a lot of weight nationally and at the state level with what we focus on, what we produce, what we promote and push for. We're the second largest district in the state, in the top 30 for the country. And we have a profile and an impact. And so when we focus on changes and improvements, and we could be the model for other districts, then even better, and everyone can benefit.
Yeah, and I really feel like if we have decisions and conversations like what happened around the legislative priorities, you wouldn't see as many complaints from everyday people or activists or moms, dads too. You're included, and grandparents and everybody else. But no, you wouldn't hear the criticism as much. I feel like there was a lot of discussion around why she wanted to add these priorities, how it would affect us. I feel like the board had a really good discussion around it. It did run a little bit longer than I wanted it to, but it's necessary sometimes because we're asking for that conversation between both parties on our board. And again, like our legislative representative for the district, Gretchen Walton is her name, she said, when it's good for the kids, we advocate for it. And I really think that that's really important, is that that's how our district should run. And that's what we've been asking to see with all the other things that we've talked about throughout this show, is that what is good for our kids in the district? What really helps them, and how can we work together to, have a functioning board without people being petty and, cutting other folks off and ignoring that piece of accountability.
Yes. Yeah. I agree. It was nice to see. And I know it wasn't quick, but that's the kind of stuff that, you know how wordy I am. That's the kind of stuff that I like to see out in the open, in front of the community, the discussion that was had. And people can actually, not only did they see and hear about the outcome, but they've also watched the whole conversation. They got to learn the information as well. They got to hear about the justifications and the benefits and what could come of it. And that is it. I loved it. And seeing more interactions like that would be really heartening. And yeah, I hope for more of it.
Yep. And so normally we have our student or school spotlight, but of course, again, it's right before Thanksgiving. So anything that you're thankful for within the district?
Yes. Last week we had at my daughter's school, we had a fun run fundraiser for additional like rec area and track improvements. And it was just, it's really fun to see a bunch of kids being goaded on by a really lively DJ. And I mean, the school, all the classes did a really good job in raising funds. And I don't know if we got the stretch goal, but everything except for that, they got all the way up. And so like you're able to just watch the community come together and support and invest in this facility that matters not only for your kid right now, but some of these improvements that'll be there 10 years from now when my family will be out of the picture, but other people will still be benefiting. And it's nice to see people invest in their community
Mm-hmm.
quite locally and very literally. And so that was really fun. But mostly just seeing a bunch of kids run in a circle while singing Golden from K-pop Demon Hunters was really, really entertaining.
No chanting of 6-7 through the whole
I think
run.
it came up once between laps 6 and 7, and then after that they let go of it. So thankfully.
Well, for me, I as a PTA member, and I literally just recorded a short video. It'll probably be up on my TikTok before we finish this show. But I like to volunteer in our media centers or learning commons or libraries, whatever name it takes in your specific school. And I normally volunteer on Fridays because I know they want to get to their weekend just as quickly as I would like to get to my weekend. And I don't have to deal with my children like they do, especially middle school students. That is a whole different ball game. But Friday before the holiday break, our media specialists were teaching classes. And me as a volunteer, I'm just shelving books. I probably shelved over 100 books today. And it's just so interesting to see all the different things, all the different genres that kids are interested in. So I'm thankful for our media specialists because, as someone who's been reading a lot more recently, just getting lost in a book is just so fun. And for, educator to kind of harvest and nurture that love of reading, it's really, really helpful for our kids. And so I'm thankful for them for that. So thank you to our media specialists. Those that I volunteer with, they know who I am because they see me both in elementary and now middle school. So I appreciate them. And we have lots of fun conversations. That's that. Any final thoughts you have, Andrew?
Just same as always. I very much recommend going to the district page, reviewing agendas, watching the board meeting recordings. Online elsewhere, there are also recordings available of people giving public comment if you're interested in hearing what the public takes time to go and say and speak on in person. I think it's very valuable. And if you ever have any ideas or questions, please reach out to one of us or comment on one of our videos and we will get back to you. And yeah, just in general, the more you pay attention and the more you ask, the more we can all work together to make things, because they're already good, we can continue to make them even better. And that's the real goal.
Yes. Well, thank you as always for joining us here on Not Board of Education, where every student deserves a voice.
And every voice deserves to be heard.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Education, Cobb County celebration, helping kids no hesitation, not Board of Education.